We've talked about AFCON being an absolute nightmare for bookies and bettors alike. But what if I told you that a competition in the English football pyramid was just as wild and unpredictable? No, it's not a minor competition with little to no popularity. It is, in fact, the FA Cup.
There's a decent pullback as well and a chance for it. Leicester's incredible comeback goes on.
This competition is rife with major upsets stretching back to the 1890s. That's right, the FA Cup has been producing spectacles since the 19th century. What makes these upsets so interesting, so much so that they deserve their own video, is down to one thing. Watching teams you never knew existed beat more established opponents from the Premier League and Championship divisions. Even better, these magical moments didn't end in the 1890s but continue today, with some major upsets happening as recently as 2023. Now, enough said. Come along as we explore some of the most exciting FA Cup upsets from the early 2000s to date. Unless, by the Irish guy's definition, you're a football hipster, I don't expect that many of you recall the FA Cup exploits of Shrewsbury Town in 2003. This team blew through the first two rounds of the competition, beating out Barrow and Stafford Rangers, pushing them into the third round. At the time, the Shrews were 7th in the third tier of the English football pyramid, League One, when they drew 5th-placed Premier League side Everton. To spice things up, the Merseyside coach at the time, David Moyes, was returning to Shrewsbury as an ex-player turned coach. So, understandably, there was a lot of emotions in this game. But all of that pales into comparison to the absolute scenes at the 90th minute when a header by Shrewsbury Town's Nigel Jemson sent the Shrews into the fourth round at Everton's expense. However, Chelsea in the next round would not abide the Guy Meadow side in the competition any longer, quickly putting Town's incredible form to the sword with a 4-0 victory. A fine I'll-do-it-myself statement to Everton's failure to get the job done. The 2010-11 season was an incredible time to be a Crawley Town supporter. The team had just been promoted into the Football League for the first time and coincided with the club making into the FA Cup 5th round tie. Crawley Town navigated the first 4 rounds, beating Guiseley, Torquay, Swindon Town and Derby County, 3 of the sides sitting above them in the English Football League pyramid. Their presence in the 5th round of the FA Cup was historic, as the club was the lowest ranked side ever to make it that far into the competition. However, despite global attention, every hope that Crawley would go on to produce a major cup upset was swiftly dispatched when they went up against Manchester United at Old Trafford. Despite hitting the crossbar in the final minute, which would have forced a replay, a Wes Brown goal was enough to send the lowly Crawley Town back to their place in the National League. The 2016-17 season saw Sutton United struggle to make a meaningful impact in the National League. However, the Yellows showed a sharp contrast to their league form in the FA Cup. The first 4 ties saw Sutton leapfrog AFC Wimbledon, Dartford, Forest Green Rovers and Cheltenham Town through a series of 1-0 wins and a replay. Then came the really challenging ties, with the 4th round facing off the Yellows against higher-placed Championship side Leeds United. Remarkably, Sutton would go on to dump the Whites out of the competition with another narrow 1-0 win at their home ground. By the 5th round tie, it seemed like the FA was desperate to send Sutton home because their opponent drawn out the hat was Premier League side Arsenal. The Gunners would run out 2-0 winners, boxing and shipping the Yellows back to the National League. However, that wasn't the end of the ridiculousness of Sutton's run in the FA Cup. Wayne Shaw, the Yellows' reserve goalkeeper, was caught on camera wolfing down an entire pie after an 8-1 odds offer by a bookies. It was a miracle, not once but twice, that a non-league side made it to the 5th round of the FA Cup. But what beats a miracle and starts to border on magically incredulous is that a non-league side made it to the quarter-finals of the competition. Lincoln City pulled off this insane feat in 2017, making the best run of a non-league club since 1914. For perspective, the last time a non-league side pulled that off was mere months after the Balkan Wars, and just shy of the start of World War I. Talk about history. Lincoln City began the competition by disposing of Brighton and Hove Albion, Ipswich Town and Oldham, all of whom play in a higher league. Then they faced tough competition in Premier League side Burnley, who were again unable to kick Lincoln City out of the competition. The Red Imps eventually wound up at the doorstep of the Gunners, who halted their progression with a 5-0 thrashing. Now, in fairness, Lincoln City did manage to maintain a 0-0 stalemate until half-time, but their run in the competition ran out of steam in the second 45 minutes, losing to the eventual winners. After the absolute capitulation both on and off the pitch that saw Leeds United relegated from the Premier League in the 2003-04 season, the Whites would spend over 6 years in freefall, descending to the lower rungs of the English Football League pyramid. In 2010, while struggling to make a difference in League One, they faced off in the third round of the FA Cup against hated rivals Manchester United, who were second in the Premier League and, as ever, contenders at the time. The Whites had dispatched Kettering and Oldham Town before their tie with Manchester United. This game produced such an abysmal display that Sir Alex Ferguson described his side's performance as shocking before calling the 5 minutes of added time an insult to the game. Jermaine Beckford, who scored the winner against Man United, proved his ability to find the back of the net again in the next round against Tottenham. However, his heroics failed to push Leeds into the next round when Spurs braced through the game and spelled a replay. Unfortunately, Leeds couldn't survive the replay, succumbing to a hat-trick from in-form Spursman Jermaine Defoe. Before Luton Town made history by clawing their way into the Premier League in the 23-24 season, they were quite the daring team. That much we saw under the management of Nathan Jones before he ditched the Hatters for Southampton. Before then though, back in October 2013, Luton was a Conference League side who had beaten Dorchester and Nuneaton Town to make it to the third round draw of the FA Cup. What followed next was 2 huge victories over Championship side Wolves and Premier League side Norwich. The latter victory cemented their place in history as the first non-league team to knock out a Premier League opponent in the FA Cup. The year 2013 was a wild one in the English top-flight division. Wigan Athletic, despite an horrendous form in the Premier League that made them relegation fodder, somehow managed a different run of form in the FA Cup. The Latics would go on to win the competition, courtesy of the heroics from Roberto Martinez and Ben Watson amongst others. Their victory overshadowed their dreadful league form and gave their fans a hope of a comeback. However, that hasn't happened so far. Wigan's FA Cup run began with some easy ties against weaker opposition before the infamous 5th and 6th rounds when they faced a David Moyes-led Everton, stunning the Merseyside club to a win and advancing to the semis. A 2-0 victory over Millwall, courtesy of goals from Callum McManaman and Sean Maloney, drove the Latics to the final against Man City. Of course, the blue half of Manchester was heavily favoured to clinch the title. However, Wigan held fast with an inspired substitute Watson, making the difference on the day with a header into the top bins. Unlike other underdogs who caused upsets by beating better placed teams, Wigan did more than that. They went the whole way and won the damn thing. Leicester City were well known for their ability to cause major upsets after breaking into the Premier League and winning it in a matter of years. Their FA Cup journey has been just as ridiculous. The Foxes won the FA Cup title under Brendan Rodgers in 2021, beating a Thomas Tuchel-led Chelsea in the final. For some perspective here, this Chelsea side was on the verge of Champions League glory against arguably the best team at the time, Manchester City. Leicester's run to the final was equally majestic, seeing off Southampton in the last 4 and Manchester United in the quarter-finals. Truly the stuff of legends. And that's all we have for today. If you like what you just saw, please consider sharing and subscribing. I bring you the best content from the world of football every single week, so don't miss out. See you in the next one.